Yes.
Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I am your host, Scott Brady, and I'm here with my illustrious co-host, Matt Scott.
Hello, I'm here.
And you have had birthdays, and you have had travels, and you have had rear engine car adventures.
Yeah.
Tell me about this little drive you did on some great roads in California.
Well, I also got engaged, which was cool.
That is really cool.
So
congratulations.
That was really fun. Yeah, I engaged Laura. We've been together for a period of time that required engagement. Too busy.
You are too lucky.
Too busy.
She said yes.
Too busy traveling.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we were. I had no excuse during COVID.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Did a trip with another kind of fellow automotive journalist, Brian Dorr. He just bought a 911 Turbo 996. He'd been saving up for that for a while, and a friend Yusuf in a GTR, and went and did all the driving roads. Did PECLA, which is the Porsche Experience Center LA, which was awesome. Like they have this polished epoxied concrete skid pad that has this hydraulic kick plate, and you drive down this thing between 15 and 30 mile an hour. You don't know which way it's going to kick the car. And the faster you go, the faster it simulates like total loss of control.
Sure.
So it's that was really fun. And then, it was a really good trip. Hung out with Bassem Wassef, who's another auto journo. He took us on the Angeles Crest.
He's a great guy.
That dude can drive. I mean, 911 Carrera S, like fast car. And he was in like an Acura. Like I don't know anything about Acuras. Sorry to Acura enthusiasts, but he was in an Acura.
Yeah.
4-door.
Yeah.
Smoked me. Smoked all of us. Like it helps that he's probably driven that road 700 times.
Yeah. It helps to know the curves for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, that was great.
Well, and another kind of adventure. I mean, we can oftentimes get so focused on the fact that we need to be on these remote dirt roads, but some of the most enjoyable moments that I've had in my travels have been on paved roads with incredible views. And
Glendora Mountain Road is the best road that I've driven. And it's like minutes from hell.
Right.
But there's no one there. It's like obscure to me because in Arizona, I've come to the realization we just don't have that many roads.
Not like that. Yeah.
Not like that, So like there's a lot more people there, but there's also disproportionately more roads for those people. We're like in Prescott, we have Highway 89, which is fun to drive, but also is there for an actual purpose.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Glendora Mountain Road is like goes nowhere.
I don't know where
it literally goes nowhere.
Like you don't really have a reason to be there.
Yeah. Not if you want to get there in a hurry. So but that's awesome that those roads exist. This episode is supported in part by Red Ox Manufacturing. Since 1986, Red Ox Manufacturing has been handcrafting the toughest soft-sided travel luggage in the world. Founded and operated by second-generation United States veterans, Red Ox bags are backed by the industry's finest warranty, the No Bull lifetime warranty. You break it, we'll wonder how, but then we'll repair it or replace it, no questions asked. Designed and lovingly built with pride in Billings, Montana, using 99% American source materials, Red Ox bags are unique and innovative and tough as tanks.
Yeah, it was really cool. It's been interesting not being able to travel in the same capacity. I mean, for me, overlanding is more about international travel than it is domestic stuff. I mean, that's just my personal thing. I like the culture and stuff. So I've kind of taken this time, all that money that isn't going into experiences and stuff. I've just been kind of playing around with cars and working like 80 hours a week. Yep. So it was nice to actually kind of like shut off and get away for a little bit.
Oh, totally. And with just great people and there's good restaurants and it's another form of travel adventure is certain. And if you think about some of those rallies that go from London to Singapore, and a lot of times they're driving these vintage sports cars.
Peking to Paris would be so cool. It's opened this new concept to me of taking the spirit of overlanding and the idea of lesser explored roads. Dirt roads turn into lesser explored roads. Mm-hmm. Technical trails turn into technical paved roads that are well known. Applying the same kind of curiosity, I guess, that you would in a 4-wheel drive. So
and the vehicle continues to be this magic carpet that transports us to wherever we're going. And those magic carpets that you've been driving are just much faster.
They're just a lot. Maybe not as fast as a TRX, but that one's a little bit of a freak of nature. So
how fun though, right? That's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. But yeah, so guys, we're going to talk about expedition vehicles today, specifically like the integrated stuff. So we're not talking about home builts. We're not talking about add-on campers and that kind of stuff. That'll be a different podcast. We're talking about earth cruisers. We're talking about earth roamers. We're talking about action mobiles. We're talking about all the big stuff that makes your mouth water that you want so much.
Yeah. And that you can live out of and you buy it as a complete camper. And there always been some options, but now there's more options than ever.
Yeah.
And it feels like that almost on a weekly basis, some new model has come, available. Like, I think it would be good to talk about some of the ones that have recently been announced, but total composite integrated campers now, they're starting to do more and more volume, and they have a great reputation for quality and value. So if you're looking for a camper that's high quality and
great people there.
Yeah. Great people, good value as well. And a lot of customization options with them. So Total Composites, not new to the scene, but very much making integrated campers now. And then there's this new one that was released just in the last 6 months called Truck House Camper. Which
looks so awesome.
It does look awesome.
But it's on a Tacoma. And I just let's just exaggerate the Tacoma's payload capability and say that it's 1,500 pounds.
Right.
It's still like the wrong truck.
Yeah.
Most of those vehicles are 1,000 to 1,200 pound capability.
Yep.
Looks really cool. How do you say, what were those old Toyota campers called that were 4-wheel drive?
Oh yeah. Those were awesome. Yeah. There was the Dolphin.
And then
there's a couple of them.
Super awesome. The modern day equivalent of that. But
back then those were still Hilux, and you could buy a 1-ton 4-wheel drive
that had a dually rear axle.
You could.
I don't know. I would love to see one of these truck house things because again, they look cool, but I'm just like, guys, why? I know that they've done bigger brakes and they've done like diamond axles or something, but it doesn't. I mean, I've been on the trail with a Tacoma with an XP camper with the driver that knew what they're doing. We were just getting on it a little bit in like Monument Valley or something, and it bent its frame.
Yeah.
So I don't know what if you have to modify a $40,000 Tacoma with aftermarket axles. I think they did long travel on the front, brakes, all this stuff. It's like you could have just bought a 2,500.
Yeah.
And it would have just done everything better
with more payload at the end of the day and challenge. And I remember when I worked with Earth Roamer on the XVJP, this was a long time ago. This was, 2005 when I was working on that project with them. The most difficult thing to overcome was the recertification of the car to a higher gross vehicle weight rating. So you can do these things like add brakes and add axles and all of that. Someone who can afford a truck house camper is someone of means.
Yeah.
And if you get in an accident with that vehicle and it's not recertified for the higher gross vehicle weight rating, you hit a bus full of children.
A lawyer is going to have, we don't know the exact implications, but we know that would maybe leave the door open.
It does. It leaves the door open, most importantly, to the insurance company saying you are driving a vehicle that's overweight.
Yeah.
There are many insurance companies that have clauses specific to modifications and most often related to gross vehicle weight rating. So if you overload your car, in this case intentionally, and you get into a really bad accident where you would want your insurance company to protect you, there's a good chance that you're not going to get protected. So Truck House Camper is going to have to find a way to recertify this.
Or do it on if budget is a thing, do it on an F-150.
Yeah.
You can get an F-150 with a
3,000 pound capacity.
Totally. And it's just interesting to me that they chose to go that route. I mean, I know that there's a lot of Tacoma people.
Yeah. And it looks great. I mean, it literally looks like a mini rad Earth Roamer.
Yeah.
But it's such a challenge and that vehicle, a 4-door long bed, it has about an 1,100 pound payload.
It doesn't get out of its way.
Yeah.
I think they supercharged it too, which is another shortcoming of that platform. So now you're going to void your factory warranty. Although I know some of those superchargers will offer a warranty with them.
Sure.
It just doesn't add up to me.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah,
with full acknowledgement of the fact that it looks awesome.
Looks amazing. The craftsmanship looks great on it. I'm stoked that somebody's doing that. But it would seem to me that long travel on a expedition camper is
bunch of unnecessary complexity. Yeah.
Unnecessary complexity. A new rear axle is unnecessary cost. A supercharger is, great. You've made more horsepower, but now you still have this terrible transmission.
Yeah.
And then you have to re-gear it because it's a Tacoma and they can't get out of their own way. And I mean, now you're talking, we know what all that stuff costs. And we know that we could have just bought a, Lariat
all day long
3,500 Ram or something that doesn't need power, doesn't need anything.
It has a 5,000 pound payload. You could stick
the 3,500s. Yeah.
You could stick the Tacoma in the bed of the Ram and still have some payload left over. I guess
my beef is, I'm lucky enough to have the 2,500 for work and the Gladiator, which is our show vehicle for Max Tracks and Adventure Imports. But the Ram is 6 inches longer in length than my Gladiator.
Yeah.
And that has a 5-foot bed. So when you take a 6-foot bed Tacoma, I'm just curious.
I bet you it's pretty close.
I don't know. It's just, I would love to hear the argument why Tacoma.
Yeah. And I suspect it's because of this legendary reliability. But when you modify something so heavily, you're going to affect that legendary reliability. I always advise people
with Toyotas, like if they're going to Baja or they're driving around the world or whatever, I'm like, the things that are going to break are the non-Toyota parts that you've installed.
That's right. All day long.
Like they're solid vehicles, but
just acknowledge
so
that
is every other American pickup truck.
They are now.
They're all good.
They're all really good now.
They've all kind of figured it out. So
so that's one, this truck house camper. And then there's this new Bond Camper Works that has a very Earth Roamer looking camper conversion on the back. We don't know much about that. It's just been released. And when we get some more information,
rear doors on theirs, and I'm just pulling their website up. The last time I saw one of their campers, it was like the rear doors opened up.
Oh,
and I thought that was so cool because you could put a dirt bike or whatever in there.
Make it a little mini toy hauler.
Yeah, and the quality and the craftsmanship looks pretty interesting on these things. They're saying that they've had builds that were 100 and they've had builds in up to $500,000 or something. So I think it's really like a custom option. And I think that those things are pretty interesting. But then you're still building if you're somebody that wants specifically what they want.
That can definitely be an option for sure. So most of what we're going to talk about today is based on an article that we did in the spring 2020 issue of Overland Journal, where we compared all of the currently available expedition campers at the time, or at least ones of significant volume. And we're going to talk about most of those. We're not going to talk about a couple of them, but, and then we're going to supplant a little bit of the Earth Cruiser EXP with their new Terra Nova. And we'll talk about why that's important. But I think it'd be great to talk about the Earth Roamer first, because they deserve to be talked about first, only because they were pretty much the first.
And we're both super familiar with one. I mean, you spent a lot of time with those.
I did.
I have an older one.
Yeah.
They're like little yachts. We call it land yachting. I don't know how to explain this thing. I mean, I love mine. It does everything that I want. I'm not looking for, it has quite a bit of off-road capability, but honestly, on all of these trucks, the size and the weight precludes them from a lot of technical trails.
Yeah.
Could you make it? Yeah. Should you? When you realize that you have your house on the back, and everything that's rattling. I don't know. I think like Earth Roamer, Earth Cruiser is kind of like the Ford and Chevy right now in the expedition vehicle world.
Definitely doing all the volume.
The Earth Roamer, I haven't seen anything in the US that is as turnkey as the Earth Roamer. Mine's a 2011. There's 10 years of small innovations that have happened since then. And even mine's just like ready to go.
Yeah.
Aside from that small little hiccup that I had with the motor blowing up immediately after I bought it. But again, that's a Ford thing.
Totally unrelated to the camper. Yeah. I think that Bill Swales was in a unique position where he saw overlanding as becoming a thing. He had done well with some investments and he had built a camper for himself. I think it was a camper builder out of Canada, if I remember. And he had built it on a Dodge, and he started traveling in it. He was living out of this thing and making notes on all of the things that he would do different. And then when he started Earth Roamer, here you have a businessman with a lot of he was an engineer as well, or is an engineer. And he had all of this experience, and he pulled it together in like, let's invest in making a great company that builds campers that a lot of people are going to want to buy. He's just somehow found that perfect balance of desirability.
I think it's 2 years right now. If you want to hand them upwards of $700,000, it's 2 years, and maybe a little bit shorter now, but
it could be, but they've been through a lot, and they had some real challenges during the economic downturn with the housing crisis and everything else like that. But Bill has just done a really good job of making a sustainable company that's now been around for almost 20 years. And I congratulate Bill on that. I've known Bill for a very long time, and I don't have any financial ties to Earth Roamer in any way, but I do just really appreciate what he's done. And I think that that's the reason why his campers continue to be so successful.
And they're a well thought out design.
Yeah.
They're a good package. And more importantly, like everything else that I look at, when you've spent time in the Earth Roamer, you look at everything else and it's second best.
Yeah.
I know that there are things that other companies specialize in. Maybe they're a little bit more off-road capable. Maybe they're better for international travel. But for domestic US travel, I have a Ford dealer on every corner.
Yep.
I may need it. Just the layout is so efficient. Like when I take people into mine, there's a few things I always show them. The first thing I do is I go to the control panel and I show them the quality of the wiring.
Yeah.
I couldn't achieve this level of perfection in a million years.
Yeah.
Everything is perfect. Everything is loomed right. Everything is just great. Mm-hmm. You pull that control panel down, which is like the nerve center of the vehicle. For as far as use of space, you start to realize like, oh, well, you have this big cabinet that's like has the cedar lined hanging drawer. The cabinet folds out, the door. Yeah. It's a door. The door comes out and then the door to the bathroom comes out and you actually double the space of your bathroom and all of your towels and all of your toiletries and everything are in that closet. All of a sudden doesn't feel cramped. And then they have like heated air being pumped into the bathroom with its own dedicated fan. So while it is a wet bath, the difference between a wet bath and a dry bath is one is a combination shower and one is a separate shower and toilet, but it dries within like 10 or 15 minutes. So it's just great use of space. You have like this whole cabinet and this thing of actual clothing drawers.
There's something to be said for decades of being in business. You learn a lot. And when you have a vehicle where they haven't had to compromise a lot because people have been willing to pay for it. They've just really continued to evolve and make it a really high quality unit. And I remember when I drove down to the Darien Gap, I was driving an Earth Roamer Jeep that I had purchased. Of course, that was a very different kind of vehicle, and that vehicle was not as successful as their big LT. In fact, I think they only made about 13 of those. It was perfect for my needs, but I was a very small customer set, like that wanted a really small vehicle, a highly capable camper. We had with us an Earth Roamer LT. So we had, that vehicle went essentially everywhere that we went. We did bring along a long section of PVC pipe. So that way, and we notched the end of it. We put a little notch at the end of the pipe. So that way we could push up the wires and the phone lines and all that other stuff.
That's a great idea.
We were constantly in Central America running into weird wiring or low wires or low cables and things like that. So we were constantly having to lift that up, or even branches and things like that. But we drove it back into Mayan ruins. We drove it into the mud. We drove it across water crossings in Nicaragua. And I think that when you look at an Earth Roamer, you don't say, oh, this looks really capable, I'm going to take it four-wheeling. I don't think that that's the use case. I think the idea is I'm going to take it traveling, and every once in a while I'm going to run into a problem.
Reserve capacity.
Exactly. So you're going to have this reserve capacity. You're not going to like spin the barrel, every day with a $300,000 to $700,000 vehicle. You're going to like every once in a while, you got to pull the trigger on this capability, and it's probably going to work for you. I remember driving them over Mosquito Pass, which isn't super technical, but to take an RV to the top of it, that's fairly notable.
I mean, they basically weigh 20,000 pounds.
Yeah, they do. And they're 9 feet wide almost. So
yeah, they're wide. They're not as wide as they feel, maybe, or look. I actually think it's slightly narrower than a dually.
Oh, it could be.
That's a non-scientific thing that I've done, but I just noticed
width.
that, the dually sticks out about a foot on each side, and the Earth Roamer from the body, the cab. And this maybe sticks out about 6 inches on each side from the cab of the truck.
And that would make sense because they use a dually platform.
It's a single conversion with basically armored vehicle Hutchinson wheels.
Yeah, they are very capable, but it's important to not look at it like I want to go to the most remote places. I want to drive a lot of unknown roads. I don't think that that's the best vehicle for that.
No. I mean, we look at it as I call it a Forest Service road cruiser.
Yeah.
It has a lot of reserve capacity with like 41s are great when you put them in the concept of a full-size truck or a Jeep. That's a lot of tire. On something that's that heavy, it's not a lot of tire.
Yeah.
In fact, I would argue that while those tires are great, they're equally bad. I think that's the only thing you really hear about with Earth Roamers is that tire's only speed rated by Continental to 67 mile an hour.
That's right.
So you do hear on the, there's a website, earthroamerforum.com. It's not super popular, but there's not that many of them.
Yeah.
You do hear blowouts and stuff, and there are always guys doing 80, 85 in Texas.
They are not designed for that.
Melt those tires.
They're not. I've changed one of those tires in Baja.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. But it was
hope and pray. That is our strategy to the Earth Roamer tire. Hope and pray that you don't have to.
We were down in like Agua Verde. We were super remote. There's this climb out of this beautiful, like tranquil little cove, and it's narrow, and the tire just kissed like one of the rocks sticking out from.
It's really shaly, if I remember.
Exactly. And it punctured the side. The driver didn't know it right away, and fortunately we got into a little bit of a flat area, but it took Cam Brenzinger from Nemo, who can do like 1,000 pull-ups, and me, who can do, well, not 1,000 pull-ups, but we're both pretty big guys.
I can do one if I jump.
Yeah. And it took, like, we were sweating, and like, it was tough to get that sucker swapped out on the side of the road. Just getting it down was not such a big deal, but getting the tire back up into that spot was tough. That was difficult. Yeah. Even with the winch and everything else. These are heavy. I mean, a couple 100 pounds easily.
Let's hope I don't have that problem in Baja tomorrow.
Nah, you'll be fine. I think it's literally just, it can happen, but knowing that when it does, do you have a plan to get that tire swapped out? Right.
I'm just going to let Laura do it. No,
she is a lot more fit than you are. So maybe she is the one.
The thing with ours is, I actually think ours was the first LTS. So the first stretch one.
Oh, nice.
And it was prior to them doing the swing away cases. So we either have to remove our rear box, which is made of aluminum and is doable, or my plan is to get the tire off, stand in the box, get the tire off, and just like throw it.
Just let it bounce.
It's just going to bounce and it's going to go where it goes. If I'm on a cliff going into Agua Verde, that may not be the idea. Hook it to the winch or something.
Yeah.
The newer ones have electric winches in the system. I do have like a system, but it's a hand crank and I have to remove the case to use it. So I don't know. That's as far as I've gotten.
Yeah.
But
it's a challenge. It's actually
the tires on these things, having, I guess, owned one for about 6 months and doing a lot of research on the expedition vehicle stuff. That's, I think, some of the advantages of what the other platforms is that they're not dependent upon a tire. I can run exactly one tire with my setup. And that is it. Now that tire's pretty, for a commercial tire, is easy to get. It's Continental. Yeah. They run them all over the world on armored vehicles, MRAPs, everything. Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons why, there's the tires, there's the size, there's the weight
and the investment
Like, I'm not saying that I wouldn't drive it around the world, but if I was buying a vehicle specifically to drive around the world, I wouldn't buy an Earth Roamer.
Yeah. It could be done, but it's not the best tool for the job.
I would not want to drive that vehicle in Asia. I wouldn't want to drive it in most cities. Kind of first world cities are fine because they get deliveries. They get a UPS. The thing that you can kind of learn is like, can a UPS truck deliver there? Well, then your Earth Roamer can get there. There's a way, there's a truck route or something. But as you're saying, you had that little PVC stick.
Yeah, it was tough.
Whereas the Earth Cruiser, you just park in a parking spot.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, we should start talking about the Earth Cruiser because I think that is the international option. Although even that, things are changing. So they had dialed in this camper to be perfect to go around the world based upon the Isuzu, Mitsubishi platforms. This one's a Mitsubishi FG that I drove in Australia, 4-wheel drive, factory diesel, no particulate filter, no exhaust trap, nothing. Yeah. It was just a bone stock diesel, the same one that you would find in Africa. So these cab over Mitsubishi FGs, they were the solution to drive around the world because they were used around the world. It was
people actually use them.
That's right. Exactly. So, and since it was cab over, it was actually shorter than the Dodge 2500. So it was this very compact package with a big camper on the back, the roof lowered so it would fit in a container. So it would fit in a 20-foot container. And when I had the chance to use it in Australia, I realized this thing is is a little bit of a sufferfest on long highway drives, but most of where I want to go in the world doesn't include,
Long
4-lane
drives,
divided highway drives. If I was on a backcountry road or if I was off-road, it was awesome and super capable. 37-inch tires, lockers front and rear, good low range transfer case, fairly light when you compare it to a lot of the other expedition campers. So I loved that Earth Cruiser in Australia. And then I had the chance last year to drive their new EXP, which is Earth Cruiser's answer to the fact that you could no longer get the 4-wheel drive, or the 4-wheel drive that you could get in recent years didn't have low range. Very recently, they were not able to sell the diesel model because of the fact that it didn't have all of those requirements for diesel vehicles. So the one that I drove last year was a gasoline V8 powered Dynatrac axles, Hero transfer case, air lockers front and rear, very nicely tuned suspension. And this thing was like driving a little Jeep Rubicon camper all over Oregon.
That's cool.
We were in places that were very challenging, like deep snow, mud and ruts and rocks. And magically, this thing, it had no trouble. It was probably the only difficulty we would have run into is if we didn't fit.
Yeah.
And it's on 37s. So like most Jeeps are running around on 35s or 37s.
I think they're super cool, and Lance, who runs Earth Cruiser, I mean, the guy actually travels.
He does. Gnarly travel.
He really travels. Like, I'm pretty sure he's had his Earth Cruiser in Borneo.
Yeah.
Where you kind of talk about Bill Swales as the engineer, Lance is the traveler.
He is.
And I think that that's where you see the Earth Cruiser is first and foremost a travel vehicle. It's not a luxury vehicle. I mean, like, I have a wine rack in my Earth Roamer. Like, that's cool. But like Earth Roamer people like that. I mean,
they do. Yeah.
I don't know.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think that's the key is it's so easy to like virtue shame someone, which has become this thing now where everybody has to be like, my way is the only way.
And everybody has to be like so hardcore, right?
Which is so silly.
And I catch myself in that too, where I'm like, that's not overlanding. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I need to just
let it go.
I need to turn it down a little bit. There's different vehicles for different people.
Yeah.
The Earth Cruisers are just so cool.
And the fact that you can stick it in a container.
I don't think I could drive a delivery van. I like the heated and cooled seats.
Yeah.
Because why not?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't take away from anything, but
for your purposes, you're like, I'm going to go to Baja for a week. Yeah. Or I'm going to drive to Colorado or I'm going to go up to Alaska. And for that, the Earth Roamer is perfect. But if you do want to cross Borneo, you might want to take a different car. Yeah,
right? that car's just going to sink in the mud.
Instantly.
Instantly. I mean, you can get quite a bit of contact patch out of those 41s, but
it's a heavy truck.
It's heavy. I mean, you're talking the gross vehicle weight of at least my Earth Roamer is 19,500 pounds.
Sure.
I have never measured it. I probably should. But I know that they're under that, but that's heavy. That's a really lot of weight.
And the Earth Cruiser is right at about 10,000 pounds. So about half of that weight, I think it has around a 12,000 pound gross vehicle weight rating. The Earth Cruiser is much lighter and it feels much lighter. And it is the size of the delivery vans in all remote places of the world. It's the same size of the delivery trucks that are bringing the Fantas.
Yeah.
It's the same vehicle. And because of that, they're really easy to take around the world.
So I guess kind of like moving on, we've talked about the two pinnacle ones. I think it would be interesting to talk about some budget options. And I'm going to throw this one in there. Winnebago Revel.
Yeah.
Really similar size to the Earth Cruiser. I have a buddy that has an Earth Cruiser on order, Cullen, and I think he ordered his a few months ago and he won't get it until February. Now the entire 4-wheel drive industry is melting down because of all these port delays. I have 4 containers of MaxTrax just like
out in the oceans
floating.
I'll wave to them as I sail towards Atu.
Don't make me think about it anymore. You're seeing a lot of delays just across the industry. King Shocks are 2022.
Yeah.
You can't get 35 or 37 inch tires right now. There's some weird things happening. So I'm not necessarily saying that delay is Earth Cruiser, but these are still $300,000 to $400,000 vehicles where a Revel, you can get a used Revel for low 100s. Now, granted, I haven't looked at prices in the last month or two because everything is crazy right now during COVID. But I want to say they're 150 to 170 new is what you're actually going to pay for them. And that's brand new vehicle. That's totally self-contained. They've made a lot of upgrades, lithium batteries. They moved the water tanks inside. They're not very large.
No, they're easy to drive. Those Sprinters are really easy to drive.
Easy to drive. They're not, for some reason, I guess a lot of people don't consider vans as expedition vehicles because they're vans, but I don't care.
Yeah, they can go around the world, and they do. I mean, Sprinters are sold around the world.
Yeah.
And Chris Cortez just bought
a Storyteller
van.
Another great option.
Yeah. And he uses his. I'm already seeing him taking great photos of it. And his Instagram is 4x4 touring. So make sure you check out. And Chris has worked with both Matt and I and all close friends for a very long time. So it's fun to see Chris in the van that he's always wanted. And then there's the Feld vans, which another Sprinter option.
Yeah, there's so many Sprinter transit based vans these days. Those are great options. And, this is something that we had kind of talked about is the residual value of these. And we want to be careful. This isn't financial advice. The market can change. The world can change. These are luxury toys and in an essence, right? I will likely not lose money on my Earth Roamer because there's such a demand for them. The Earth Cruisers are essentially the same way. Yep. It takes such a long time to get one that you have people that are willing to pay, real money for them. But let's maybe talk about like the Revel. They seem to be holding their value quite well.
For sure.
I know that again, the RV world is very strange right now. Sometimes if you recognize like, I want this vehicle for a short period of time. If this is something you're going to keep, residual values don't necessarily matter. But if you're like, I want to drive to Alaska, I want to drive to Panama, I want to drive, I have a purpose. I think that these vans are very attractive. People don't mind them with miles on them. Think of the time that you can spend acquiring income rather than building a vehicle.
Sure.
If you were to build a Ram with a 4-wheel camper, you're talking realistically, because you're not getting any discount on trucks right now. You're talking 60 to 80 for a truck. You're talking, vehicle conversion, suspension, flatbed, 30, 50 for the camper with a year wait list. Like there's a lot of time, energy, manpower and stuff that go into building an expedition vehicle like that, where now you can kind of just
get a turnkey
it. And if you're just going to do US, Canada, Mexico, you can finance these things, which is awesome, I think, rather than paying essentially cash for a 4-wheel camper and, maybe finance a truck or however people financially do it. There are now, Earth Cruiser, you can finance an Earth Cruiser, you can finance an Earth Roamer.
Yeah. What's the depreciation?
What is it worth when you go to sell it versus what your monthly payment or whatever that is.
And you may find that with an Earth Roamer, and this has been the case for many, many years, some people have sold their Earth Roamers for exactly what they paid for them, or sometimes even a little bit of a profit.
Yeah.
So they drove the vehicle for however many years, enjoyed it, actually made a little bit of money on it. Now
we all know people that have done that. Again, this isn't, what do they
Things
say?
Can change.
A prior performance does not indicate future returns.
Yeah.
That is an interesting thing to kind of consider, that buying one of these turnkey vehicles also comes with the fact that, they've now built almost 300 Earth Roamers.
Yeah.
They know how to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas some of these smaller van companies or some of these, I'm going to have this 4-wheel drive shop do this and this 4-wheel drive shop do this and this camper company do this, the left hand's maybe not talking to the right hand.
And it doesn't give the resale customer a lot of confidence in the vehicle. So you'll see these custom campers where they say $300,000 invested and they get $120,000 for it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have
There's so many
resale value.
I'm not going to call them wannabe Earth Roamers. It's just that Earth Roamer inspired vehicles that I see and at people that I've talked to, and mine will end up costing significantly less.
Yeah.
I guess the thing is, these are all finite resources, right? Like eventually my Earth Roamer will get used up.
Yeah.
It's not going to be around for 100 years. It's not going to be around for 30 years.
Right.
Maybe. I guess we still see those little Toyota things running around.
Yeah.
But it is something to consider.
Yeah. Look at the resale value of the vehicle. So you're actually only paying for the depreciation. And if these vehicles aren't really depreciating, then you may pay a lot less than you think. So the DIY thing has this appeal of like the initial investment cost being potentially lower. But again, like you said, Matt, how much is your time worth? All of that energy put into...
I know couples that will take multiple dozens of people that I've interviewed over the years for Overland Journal and stuff. They quit their jobs in June and they don't end up getting on the road until December because they've spent 6 months figuring this out. Oh, we had a problem with this. Oh, we had a problem with this. And I'm like, well, everybody's financial situation is different. Everybody's life is different. I've been the person that lived in a Land Cruiser and was like, oh, I need $50 to survive this week.
Yep.
And now I'm in business and my time is significantly more valuable to me.
Sure.
So depending on where, you guys as the listeners fall on that, I think it's an important thing to consider.
Yeah, look at the entire investment, all of your time. What's the resale value going to be? And a lot of times getting a well-known, high-quality turnkey solution is actually a better investment.
Or you can be like me and make that decision and have a $30,000 engine replacement the week later.
Yeah, that can happen.
So, hey, those things happen too.
That can happen for sure.
Global Expedition vehicles are another great one. They have the adventure truck side and then they have the GXV side. The GXV side, in my opinion, is more custom.
Bespoke for sure.
If you have specific needs and GXVs are in excess of earth roamers, in my opinion.
Because they're custom.
You are limited to, you can choose fit and finish on an earth roamer, but that's kind of what you're choosing. You're not, I'd like this custom bathroom, or I'd like this washer and dryer, or I'd like this here. You're buying a series production vehicle, where I think the really cool thing with GXV is, and the sky's the limit. I think they are truthfully the closest that we get to a Action Mobile or
Bliss
or somebody like that in the US. This adventure truck thing, they're in the 200s, so they're a little bit more affordable. They're not as luxurious as a earth roamer, but comparable in concept, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
I like that they're lighter, which means you have less problems with the tires. You're not running right at that max load of the tire like you are in the earth roamer on the rear axle.
They're heavily inspired by Gary and Monica Westcott's Turtle.
Well, they actually make a Turtle. I don't know if it's an adventure truck or if it's under the GXV brand, but you can go and buy a Turtle, which is really cool.
So it doesn't have cab over sleeping. So it's actually very compact inside, and they build it on a single cab Ram with a lot of the AEV components. So you end up with a much shorter overall vehicle, a much more capable vehicle. I like the bright and light interior. I actually really like the layout of the inside. And I think that for the price, you're getting something extremely capable and also something that's very comfortable at the end of the day. I think that adventure truck on the single cab without the cab oversleeping, it's one of my favorite visually trucks that you can get. And I think it's a really interesting option as well. I like the capability that comes from that. Thing to know about Global Expedition vehicles is that because they do so much bespoke work, every vehicle is different. So you will inherently have more difficulties with the truck. If you productize something like an earth roamer and they have a engineered wiring loom that is exactly the same from vehicle to vehicle and it's installed the same way, you're going to have less trouble. So just know that the more bespoke your solution is, there is no way around it. You will have more problems with it. There'll be more reliability
and that's
issues.
not a dig at GXV.
No, it's just like it applies to every brand that does bespoke work.
Yeah. They do also have an adventure truck now that's built on a dual cab that I really like. That's God, I hate to say just like mini earth roamer, but like
it looks like an earth roamer. Yeah.
I mean, they're kind of the Kleenex, right? Like they were there first. So they weren't there first, but you get what I'm trying to say.
First with any volume.
Yeah. First with volume. So that does have a cab over, a little bit more expensive. Those are really fascinating, but they're again, then you're getting back up there in the weight. I have to say that these adventure truck single cab would never work for me with the Greyhound, but
I like it. I think it's cool. I mean, I've definitely penciled that out a few times, like that possibility for sure.
And I like the fact that these things they're not as complicated as some of the other things. Like you're running steel suspension, you have AEV components, which are going to be flawless. Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah. You get away from some of the complexity, which I think is an advantage.
Nimble stuff, which you've driven. I've been
that's
around
brand new.
The XP campers, which was nimble.
Yes.
I guess. I mean, they're the same.
It looks the same. Or it looks very similar. So Nimble purchased the intellectual property of XP Camper. I don't know all of the details behind that transition, and I don't think it's necessarily important to the conversation here, but it used to be XP Camper. In fact, I remember when XP Camper wasn't even a company yet, and Mark, the guy who started it, drove into our lot here at the offices with his Dodge Ram with the very first, XP Camper on it. And I remember he was trying to lift the roof and there was some problem and he was just trying to get started. And it was just neat to see his enthusiasm and all of that. It was apparent to me that there was a good idea there. And in hindsight, I now know that it's because it was designed by this guy by the name of Steve Kasloff, who is the son of the guy who designed the first earth roamer. So that's a very interesting tie-in. And unfortunately, XP Camper never really acknowledged Steve's involvement properly. So Steve is yacht designer. He's a boat designer.
Gotcha.
And so that's why
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, that's why an XP camper looks the way that it does, especially on the inside. It looks like a shipwright. It looks like it was an interior fiberglass mold of a sailboat. And it feels that way. And the whole construction feels that way. So I think that Nimble has done a good job of not only acknowledging Steve's work, but taking that to the next level and also bringing in a lot of engineering that Mark never had. And so these systems are a lot better now. So my experience with the Nimble was very positive in the fact that, oh, this feels like a fully integrated truck now.
Yeah.
It feels like all of the systems have been well thought out. Everything's working. It's very capable. It's again in that 10 to 11,000 pound range. So you've got standard tires. It's built on an F-350. It's a vehicle that is also more accessible in the price range too.
Lower servicing costs with the kind of the not medium duty components.
Yeah. And it does have a lowering roof, which is another advantage. It's kind of an interesting hybrid. So the whole back half of it is a lifting roof that has solid sides. And then right over the bed, they have soft sides. So it would be interesting if they could ever find a way to do like the Alaska camper where they have these hard panels that flip down. Yeah. That would help make it much more quiet at night with wind and things
if they could figure something like that out, I think an XP would be, really, really attractive.
It would be.
And again, like I'm just talking about my personal experience. Like there's definitely a lot of situations we get into where the Earth Roamer is too big.
Pretty tall.
But like our Jeep is too small for what we're trying to do. The Jeep's great. I'm sure there's people that are like, oh, he just has to sleep in this fancy camper. But like,
but you want to spend long periods of time working from the road. You want to be on your way to Alaska and working and living.
Hard. It's hard to get 6 foot plus people and an 80-pound Greyhound that's like the size of another 6 foot human when he's like stretched out.
Sure.
Into a 5 foot bed.
It's tough.
Like,
especially for long periods of time.
I mean, my dog runs my life. Regular listeners will know that. Like, that Earth Roamer is Dak's car. We kept running into problems in Mexico and other places we travel just with street dogs.
Yeah, sure.
And we weren't going because it was like, oh, well, Dak's going to get in a fight or this dog's going to get in a fight with him. And Greyhounds, like, they don't have an undercoat. Yeah. Too much information, but
they don't do well in a dog fight.
They don't do well in dog fights. So I think that the Nimbles are really, really cool.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to eventually getting in one of those and taking one camping.
It was very comfortable. It has a full, wet head. And how they make that work is pretty clever. It's got a fairly bright, open interior. It feels capable off-road. It kept surprising me.
Yeah.
When we did the trip, we kept intentionally putting it into harder and harder situations. And I was just waiting for the rear bumper to scrape and it never happened. And with lockers front and rear, it ended up being very, very capable.
And what chassis? Because I believe with Nimble, you can choose your own chassis. They're building them on the 7.3 Ford Super Duties, I believe, right now.
That's their current recommended platform is the quad cab 7.3 liter gas Ford F-350 with the factory rear locker. Their logic behind the 7.3 gas, which has a lot of merit, is that we are still in this weird transition with ultra low sulfur diesel.
Yes.
And the goal of John and the team at Nimble is to build a global travel vehicle. Your best option right now is actually a gas engine.
100%.
And that 7.3, it's normally aspirated and it's designed for fleet service. So,
and it's a brand new motor, right?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good.
I think it's a winner. I mean, I will say I have a 6.7. I had to replace a 6.7 with 19,000 miles on it at spun a bearing. There's a lot of systems on that vehicle that can fail.
Yeah.
When I was with the new motor and that, I had to go through a lot of, new EGR valve, new this sensor, new that, new intercooler, this, and you're upgrading all these components. I mean, now that everything I did had a CARB EO number, kind of become a stickler with air quality. It might not be popular, but I love breathing clean air.
I grew up in Southern California, and it's like anybody that I know that's even anti-EPA, they all acknowledge the fact that California is actually a lot nicer place to live now, that you can take a full breath. I remember most days when I was growing up, it was some SIG alert because the air quality was so bad you could not go outside and play. And now that doesn't happen really anymore.
Yeah, which is great.
So there's an advantage to like taking care of Mother Nature, right? So
yeah, I mean, along the lines of the ultra low sulfur diesel, like even Mexico's not on it. Mexico is one of the last developed countries to not have already switched. I mean, anything that's near the border, you can get the ultra low sulfur diesel. But
and in a lot of the bigger cities, what'll happen is once the dignitaries and the local politicians and the people of means, they want to buy their new Mercedes, and their new Mercedes is ultra low sulfur. That'll drive the change.
Yeah.
So you're already seeing it even in Africa, where you go in, if you go to Johannesburg, or if you go into any of the big cities in those countries, you can find ultra low sulfur diesel because they want to drive the nice new cars. And so that'll drive that change, obviously. But for the moment, it's still a weird transition. So the 7.3 is probably the best solution for that. And I did really like the nimble. It felt, not to misuse the word, but it felt nimble. It felt more, if it is narrower.
Well, you're saying like you were cruising on it in like the Black Rock Desert.
Oh yeah. We hit 100 miles an hour on that thing. So, which, it's what they do land speed testing.
Yeah. I recently found out from my friend's son, who used to own my Earth Roamer, that my Earth Roamer has been airborne at about 70 on that playa. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah. Well, now you know it can fly.
Now I know it can fly.
Pigs can fly. Yeah. So the nimble was great. Challenge is obviously getting more people aware of it and getting more on the road and continuing to refine the product in the ways that they have. I think that it's a great option for people, and it's also much more affordable than a lot of the other ones out there.
But how cool is it versus where the industry was 10, 15 years ago to see these companies thriving, to see these companies innovating. There's so many options out. And I just think once the general RV, that's a trend that I've kind of seen, is these Earth Roamer-esque, again, I hate saying that, but that's just kind of the term, these Earth Roamer-esque, Elkhart Lake RVs, like the ones that all come out of like Indiana, now
they put them on a 4-wheel drive.
Yeah, now they're putting them on a 4-wheel drive, and I'm wondering, it won't take too long, I think, to start seeing that side of the market go in, which I'm not saying that it will result in higher quality things. But you have like the Winnebago Echo, which is coming out, and that one's interesting, built on a dually rear axle Ford Transit chassis with the 3.5 EcoBoost and a 10-speed. Yeah. Laura's parents actually have the first one of those coming, although it's been delayed and delayed and delayed.
Is it the all-wheel drive one?
Yeah, it's well, first they bought the one that had the slide out. And Ron bought like the first one of those, and then they kind of like canceled it 3 months into his order. And they're like, "Oh, we can get you the smaller one." It's been interesting, right? Yeah. Like I think that one was launched a little prematurely.
Sure.
That one's cool because that's like the size of an Earth Roamer functionally that's my basis for a lot of things, right? You can get them with this kind of hybrid wet dry bath, and they're going to be about 150, but that's a 4-season, composite camper. Yeah. On a van, which arguably a van is kind of the way to go, because you don't have like on my truck, I have X amount of camper, and then I have an equal amount of truck in front of it.
That's right. And the semi cab over configuration of a van, where you're kind of sitting on the front tires, or at least your feet are on the front tires, you do save a lot of interior space. So you end up with either a shorter vehicle overall, or you end up with a lot bigger camper on the inside of it, which is really an advantage. And I think maybe for those that are listening, when you look at all these new campers coming out, there should be things that you're looking for. First of all, the construction must be composite or aluminum or metal framed, so that it can flex and handle high frequency vibration. It is just not suitable to take a wooden framed camper off-road for any distance. They may tell you otherwise, but it is only because they're trying to sell you a camper. If the camper must be made in a way that it can endure high frequency vibration of corrugations. Otherwise, all of that glued wood and fasteners and screws and nails and everything else like that, they will literally come apart.
It will just turn into trail trash.
It'll just, exactly.
Like, how many of those pickup campers have you seen like in the middle of nowhere down some corrugated road, and it like fell out, and then they're just like, I'm going to just keep driving.
Yeah. They don't survive. They don't endure that kind of abuse. So there is a reason why an Earth Roamer is made out of composite. There's a reason why Earth Cruiser is made out of composites. Now, the next thing that you need to look for is that on these long chassis, because these are, again, big campers, you're dealing with a lot of chassis flex. So if you and this is another mistake that a lot of these new to Overland campers make, is that they kind of bolt it down rigidly to the frame in the same way that they do for an on-the-road camper. And then that will literally rip apart the camper in very short order, or it will do damage to the frame. So you want to have some variant. Yeah, exactly.
They twist like this. Yeah. That's how that works.
Yeah. For those watching on YouTube, you can see Matt's demonstration of twisting an Overland Journal magazine, which is
scientific and wonderful.
Exactly. So you want to have some variation of allowable flex within the attachment points. Now, companies like Earth Roamer address that with a 3-point system. So the frame can flex and it just rotates on that single point in the rear. There are others that use multi-point systems that have large diameter and very strong springs and cones. So that way it can come out and drop back in under the return pressure of the spring. But there must be some way to allow for chassis flex, because all of these things, especially a long wheelbase truck, they all flex. So look for that when you look at a camper. If it does not have that, it is not suitable for remote overland travel. And that's the reason, again, why Matt keeps coming back to the van. The van has structural integrity because of the body. So there's a lot of advantages to the van where you don't need to do all of these complex adjustments.
Yeah. And you can make vans crazy too. Like, you can send your Revel to Agile off-road.
Yeah.
They do crazy stuff. They have long range tanks. They have like bumpers, they have suspension, they have like everything that I just think tomorrow, if I was driving the Pan Am, I'd buy a Revel because it's just done and they've made like thousands of them.
Yeah.
That now this second generation, which I think was 2020.
Yeah, I think so. Very recently
with the lithium. So they were able to add power, reduce weight, move the water inside.
Yeah. Then there's also the Eagle Hout conversion. So you can buy a 2-wheel drive Sprinter, send it to Europe. They'll basically slap a G-Wagon up underneath it with lockers front and rear, G-Wagon transfer case, 37-inch tall tires, long travel suspension. And I've driven those off-road and they're absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
They are so impressive, especially on the 144 wheelbase. So then you take delivery of your Eagle Hout converted Sprinter in Europe, you drive it around Europe for a while, and then you ship it home, and then you do whatever interior build out you want.
Yeah.
And you end up with this 37-inch tired dual lockered Sprinter.
Yeah.
With low range.
So here's something that we didn't really talk about, but I keep saying that the budget option is the Revel, still $150,000.
They're expensive. Yeah.
What are the other options? Like, I guess that's a DIY van build, or I will say, like, trying to DIY an expedition truck, I think is one thing, whereas DIYing a van definitely makes way more sense because you already have the structure, and in theory, all you need to do is put a mattress in the back. But
yeah, the DIY option is buy a pickup and then install a camper in the bed. That is definitely the DIY option. That's kind of, or that not the DIY, but that's the less expensive option. That's what I'm going to be doing. I guess we're going to hear it here first, but I just got an AT4 GMC. That is their off-road version.
Looks great.
It is a really nice looking truck. I just put AEV true beadlock wheels on it and 35s, and I've got some other modifications planned for it. It's important to have full disclosure on this. I am working with GMC on this project. So we were supported heavily in the purchasing of the truck. So I just want that to be out there and very clear. My plan is to install a Scout camper on the back, and I'm buying this camper. I've got it on order, and the goal is to install this camper that I really feel is going to be my version of an expedition camper. It's going to be very simple, lightweight, and between the truck and the camper, it'll be in that $90,000 range, including modifications.
And if you think about it, what are the big things that why are you actually doing a hard-sided camper? You're doing that for shelter, and you're getting the same kind of shelter that I'm getting in an Earth Roamer at
a composite panels,
lower cost. There's a lot of advantages. I know this segment wasn't about campers, but there are a lot of advantages. I mean, as
you can
always,
take them out and use it as a regular pickup.
Use them as a regular truck. As always, we like to advise people, like, spend the money on travel. Like, don't feel like you have to have any of this stuff, because the reality is that you can buy a Toyota Prius and drive that to Ushuaia and stay in hostels and sleep in the back. Like, get out and do it first.
Yeah.
Don't let stuff be prohibitive to the experience. It's all too easy. Like, I especially, during COVID, I'm kind of catching myself that, well, we're all just like kind of sitting at home. Like, is it right to go travel? Is it not right to go travel? I mean, like, it's a crapshoot on who you ask. So I'm not going to get into that, but removing yourself from the stuff, and and focusing on the travel is just what this is all about.
And I think that that's the inspiration for me. I've spent so many years sleeping in the back of a Land Cruiser, and I love that. And it's something that I want to continue to do in my life. The idea of me being able to build a truck and a camper that I can work out of, that I can have the view of the Grand Canyon while I'm connected to my Starlink and doing business during the day and working hard, but then be able to, instead of doing the same hike every day that I do in Prescott, I'm doing a new hike every day. And I'm experiencing new places and I'm seeing new things, and I'm able to work remotely. And that is, I know, a motivation for a lot of people who buy campers. They're justifying it as like, this is going to be my home and this is where I'm going to work and I'm going to make a living. And now I'm connected. And, the Starlink thing is still being sorted out, but we just heard a few weeks ago that they plan to have it mobile by the end of the year,
which is that's going to change things.
I just tested it and I got 170 megabits per second download. I mean, that's, you can do real work all day long.
That's faster than our internet here.
I know, it's great. It's super fast. So you can do video conferencing. You can, if we do a YouTube video production, I can upload it from someplace remote. These are really significant changes that we're seeing happen, and people are like the idea of living remotely and traveling and living out of their vehicle.
And it's more doable post-COVID. We now live in this world where companies essentially had to develop the infrastructure for working remote. Otherwise, you couldn't work. So, there's always been a stigma against working remotely, but for certain jobs, why not these days?
Yeah. If you're a knowledge worker or a creative person like Matt and I are, we can work from most places.
Yeah.
And we certainly need to spend time with our team, and that's all going to be built into my strategy. But being able to work from this scout camper from Alaska or from the Grand Canyon, that sounds really appealing.
Yeah.
We'll see how that all turns out. And we'll have a future podcast on sliding campers as well. We'll also talk more about my project vehicle in a future episode as well. We do need to quickly talk about the Terra Nova, which is Earth Cruiser's new offering.
Oh yeah. The Terra Nova is awesome.
Yeah. And that's just been released. And I know that they've got many of them on pre-order and they've been very successful. That was a successful launch for them. So it is a pop top Earth Cruiser on
a 1 ton,
a 1 ton Ford or Dodge. You can pick your platform.
It looks great.
It looks really good. It's very lightweight. It has all of that simplicity that you would expect from Earth Cruiser with a high degree of performance and build quality. So this is a composite base, and then it has a pop top roof with soft sides, which makes it, a solid 3-season solution, 4-season with some care. These are really, really cool new campers. It's a new one on the market. Matt and I have not had a chance to test it yet, but we do know Earth Cruiser well, and we know the quality of their products, and I suspect it's going to be a real winner. So more details on the Terra Nova once we get a chance to try it out.
Looking forward to driving that. Well, cool.
Yeah, those are all good ideas, Matt, around, what's the real cost of buying these things? And it's maybe lower than we think. And what's the real advantages of being able to sleep comfortably and live comfortably out of our vehicle while we're working and playing? That's why these campers have become so popular.
Yeah. And, kind of like we said, you can do it on all kinds of levels. That can be a DIY van. That can be an Earth Roamer. That can be a Unicat.
Yep.
We didn't really talk about because you can't really get those here.
Not really.
As long as it gets you out, and I don't know, that's what I'm all. So,
and if you've got further questions on Expedition Campers, you can always reach out to Matt and myself. You can find me on Instagram at scott.a.brady, and Matt, I think, has suspend it? Have you suspended your Instagram?
You know, it's just becoming a bit toxic for me. I don't know. I'm just not doing Instagram for a while. I'm taking that time that we all spend on social media, which is hours a day.
Yeah.
And I'm putting it into other aspects of my life and spending the rest trying to get out and travel. So
yeah, good for you. You're actually having those experiences instead of taking photos and sharing.
I do occasionally log into Facebook and I posted something like, did some really cool stuff last week. Forgot to take pictures for the internet, you know, but I guess you can reach out, you know, through my company, through Adventure Imports. We're on Instagram and
there you go. Yeah. Go to Adventure Imports on Instagram and you can somehow find your way to Matt from there.
Yeah. Sounds good.
And thank you all for listening and we will talk to you next time.